Hello, and welcome to We Read It One Night, a podcast where two sisters gossip, grouse, and giggle over your favorite romance novels. We're here today to introduce you to your bisexual awakening, an important stage of the Brendan Fraser Renaissance currently sweeping the nation. Yes, that's right, we're discussing The Mummy, 1999, a cinematic masterpiece that is actually a romance disguised as an action movie. No matter what your brother, or your boyfriend, or your dad tells you. Enjoy the show!
We went to a farm that rescues farm animals a few weeks ago, and we were walking up to see the cows, and all the cows were pretty chill. They were people were petting them. They were just eating, except for one that looked at me, and I was like, that cow does not want us here. It's aggressive. It was huffing at me, and no one else noticed the body language of this cow. But then 15 minutes later, Cameron or my friends, I can't remember who, tried to pet it. And the guy in charge was like, oh, no, that's the one you don't want to pet. And it stamped. He was like, yeah, she's no. She's not into visitors. Leave her alone. And I was like, we had a telepathic connection there. I knew, she knew, and I fucked off.
Proud of you. Happy for your telepathic connection with this guy.
Yep. Luckily, no one was trampled to death.
Anyway.
So, this week's episode is about the
Brenaissance
and the Mummy.
It's the Brenaissance. Yeah, The Mummy, 1999, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, aka the greatest on-screen chemistry of all time between two actors.
Possibly.
Well done. You. Name a better couple right now.
Brendan Fraser and Ursula, whose actual name I do not know, in George of the Jungle.
No. Listen, I love George of the Jungle. George of the Jungle is good because Brendan Fraser spends the entire time shirtless and oiled up, and it's just generally amusing. It's not because of the chemistry with fake perm, whatever actress's name is.
Oh, I love her. I want a perm because of that. Or I did, at least at some point. And it comes back every few years.
Anyway, Brendan Fraser is wonderful, and he is the star of The Mummy, and he's currently having a resurgence of his career, and I've heard nothing but lovely things about him. Yes. And he was the follow-up to Harrison Ford that we never were given the true opportunity to have.
I appreciate
because we didn't understand what we had when we got it. The charisma, the swoopy hair, the muscles, the acting talent, the doing his own stunts. A Renaissance man. A Brenaissance man. if I've ever seen one.
So we start this movie long before Brendan Fraser, thousands of years ago. How long ago was this supposed to be?
3000 BC. I don't know. Okay, the Egyptian Empire lasted for a very
long ass time. So I don't know exactly
Egyptian
when.
Empire.
Yes. And the setup is that we have Imhotep, our future villain for unexplained reasons, is
Sexy
in love.
Bald man, constantly walking around shirtless.
Yes. He's the head priest. He's in love with one of Pharaoh's probably many wives. Okay. And she's in love with him.
No, it's Pharaoh's concubine. So they're not even married.
Oh, yeah,
exactly. He didn't even put a ring on it.
Yeah. He's just trying to possess these women. And the priest is like, I'm not here for it. This is the love of my life. But of course, for some reason, they're supposed to be the villains. And the narrator is clearly on Pharaoh's side for no reason. Yeah. So of course they get caught. They kill Pharaoh. Oh no.
They get caught. Okay. They get caught because she's painted. She doesn't have any real clothes except for some tasteful netting. Her clothes are just paint. And they start making out. And he doesn't even take this opportunity. If you're going to touch her, at the very least, grab her butt or her hips or her boobs, something sexy. No, he just grabs her arm. And then Pharaoh sees the smudged paint and is like, who has touched you? And she's like, fuck. And instead of being oh, I bumped into a door or one of the many columns in this room, here's a perfectly reasonable explanation for why my paint has been smudged. I went to the bathroom, my hair brushed against it. She just
goes all in and she stabs him, which
yes,
I'm here for it.
But
honestly.
she has a great feminist line. She says, what is it? My body is no longer yours to command or whatever. She's basically just I'm a feminist queen and now I'm going to stab myself in the stomach for unexplainable reasons instead of any other significantly less painful death.
Yes.
Although I guess I think stabbing deaths in the stomach can actually be very quick if you hit the right organs. If you hit something that releases bile or something, like the pancreas.
Oh, I never heard of that. I thought it was the opposite.
It can be slow, but like there's definitely like if you hit the right spot, it can like poison you. It poisons you. That's
well, I thought sepsis poisons you, but like over a long time period. Like once you like perforate the right intestine, it's like over. But like several hours or days later, whatever.
Rachel, shockingly, I don't have intimate knowledge.
Okay, so next up, despite being surrounded by Pharaoh's other priests,
also painted in gold, Pharaoh has a fetish.
Our head guy and his crew manages to spirit away. I don't even know what her name is. Love interest girl, Pharaoh's ex-concubine.
Anaxunamun.
They spirit her away, and they get her to like I guess it's a pyramid.
The city of the
dead. Yeah. And they're like,
Hamunaptra.
Okay, we're gonna bring her back to life. Hamunaptra, the city of the dead. We're gonna bring her back to life. But right as they're about to do it, and her spirit is about to rejoin her body, they are beset upon by Pharaoh's other priests who are like, well, of course, the only thing we can do to this, our regicide head priest who killed our dear leader, is to give him superpowers. They're like, this is our worst punishment. We only save it for the worst. And it sounds pretty bad. They lock him in a sarcophagus. And
they bury him alive. They wrap him, and then they fill it with scarabs.
Flesh-eating scarabs. And that's pretty bad. However, it comes with the catch that if he's ever released, he will gain superpowers and take over and destroy the entire fucking world. Including,
and release the 10 plagues of Egypt. Yes. Unclear as to why this Judeo-Christian thing is creeping into this ancient Egypt curse, but it is.
Yes. So, good. He's in eternal agony, theoretically eternal until it's ended.
Right, but so here's the thing about this though. So the scarabs, right, they pop up a lot. The scarab beetles eat you. I don't think that's a thing that actual scarab beetles do, but I guess they're like magic Egyptian scarab beetles. And the scarabs eat people, and for the rest of the movie they eat people really quickly, like piranhas.
Oh yeah.
Right? but for some reason he has time when he's being buried alive / eaten by scarabs to scratch like a full hieroglyphic message into the inside of his coffin that's like says something like, I will return. And I don't understand the myth, the lore of the scarabs. I feel like it could have been cleaned up a little bit more. I don't fully understand how they work.
Maybe that's part of the curse. Maybe usually it's a merciful death, but like in the context of being buried alive with them, they like, maybe normally it's like they have a scarcity mindset and they're like, let me just get all the food I can. But when it's in a sarcophagus for all eternity, they can take their time.
But also, where are the scarabs? When they open the sarcophagus, there are no scarab shells or like carcasses. There are no dead scarabs. So where do they go? How did they get out of this?
There are some scarabs like hanging out on the walls. So maybe they like are able to get out somehow and like just hang out.
When they open the sarcophagus, it's like pressurized air like pops on. Like it's like, whew, like this thing hasn't been open in 3,000 years. So how the fuck did these scarabs? They're magic scarabs, I guess. Scarabs. The scarabs are the first to be affected by the curse. That is actually, that explains everything. The scarabs get superpowers first.
Immortality.
And then,
Okay, so fast forward 3,000 years, we see Brendan Fraser with his crew for some reason trying to attack the Forbidden City.
No. They're not attacking the Forbidden City. They're hanging out at the Forbidden City. He's hanging out there with with the French.
Yeah, unclear.
I think, and they're attacked by the Magi.
The Forbidden City is being defended by the descendants of the priests of Pharaoh who originally put Imhotep in the sarcophagus.
Not the priests, the bodyguards. The shitty bodyguards who didn't defend Pharaoh and are now not defending his city.
Yeah, they're not very good at their jobs. They have one job. It's literally don't let anyone near here, and they're about to fail. Everyone gets killed in Brendan Fraser's crew except for Brendan Fraser and our guy Benny, who is a total snake.
Love Benny. This is actually if Evie wasn't in this movie, Evie who's a love interest, she's played by Rachel Weisz. If she weren't in this movie, I would have loved to see a enemies to lovers story between Brendan Fraser.
But they're not enemies to lovers. They're friends to backstabbing enemy to potential lovers. I see it. But Benny just keeps backstabbing the entire time.
Imagine the tension. Imagine like a love scene between Rick, who's Brendan Fraser's character, and Benny. Like, I feel like there would just be like constant like fighting. Like it would be like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like they'd be constantly trying to like stab each other, but also like making out in between stabs.
It would be constant Titanic shit. It would be like there's definitely enough room for both of us in this like abandoned house or whatever to hide from the Magi. But Benny's just going to slam the door in Rick's face for no reason, which is what happens in the first scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, maybe it's all part of an extended role play. Maybe it's just like a long, very long like story that they're acting out in which he betrays him and then Rick gets revenge and then they make out.
Yeah. Like I'd be here for that. So the next scene we get is Rachel, right? Or what is her actual name? Evie.
Oh, Brendan's arrested, by the way, by the Magi. Rick goes to jail.
I thought he went to jail later. Oh, was that?
No, he's been in jail this whole time. He's in jail for like 3 years.
No way. He gets away because they see him. No, that's why the Magi are bad at their job. Because they see him getting away and they're like, why would we bother going after him? He'll just die in the desert. But he definitely doesn't die in the desert.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, he's not arrested by.
We don't get an answer on why he was arrested.
Not the French. The French are involved in that, but I don't know what side they're on. Anyway, yeah, Rick's running through the desert and the head Magi, who's very sexy and has wonderful under eye tattoos. Like his partner is like, let me shoot him right now. And he's like, nah, why would we do that? Why would we easily get rid of our enemy?
The only other living person who knows where this mummy is located. He doesn't know it's a mummy, but knows where this like the riches. Okay, so the next scene is Evie. She is a pretty incompetent librarian. She's like is constantly
sexy librarian.
Sexy
Rachel.
librarian
That's
who knocks
the most
over
important part
lots of
is that she is sexy as hell and she's not incompetent. She's very good at her job. She's just
honestly,
clumsy.
My first thought was she's ugly and incompetent. She should not be in this country.
Oh my God. Okay. No, listen. The anti-imperialism is you're right on the money with that. But Evie has great fashion sense. She has great hair. She has cute little librarian glasses. She's very sexy and she's fluent in ancient Egypt. So I will not be tolerating Evie slander at this time. She should, however, be going home and not stealing things from Egypt for the British Museum. Agreed on that.
Yeah. Her whole goal is to become a famous Egyptologist, which is what her parents did, I think. And now her and her brother are here trying to keep up the legacy. But she is being stymied in her efforts by her inability to not knock over giant shelves of books. And possibly set things on fire. There might have been like a slight fire in there somewhere. Maybe
she doesn't set things on fire. Her boss sets later things on fire on purpose.
Yeah, so she's like begging her boss to go find something, the Forbidden City, but he's like, no, for good reason, as we'll find out.
No, not yet. No. You're skipping the brother, Jonathan.
Yeah, that happens next. She talks to the boss first.
No, but she's not. No, she doesn't want to go find Hamunaptra because she doesn't know about it. She only brings up Hamunaptra when Jonathan finds the map.
Sure.
No, okay. So Evie's ultimate enemy at this point, because she hasn't met sexy bald mummy yet, is the Benbrook scholars who won't allow her to join their little racist Egyptologist club, and she's very upset about it, even though she's far more competent to them. And yeah, now she goes into the room filled with all these things of like ancient things that are definitely very delicate, and also the room is filled with torches. And I feel like that's a very contradictory thing that you are putting open flames in front of like all these like 3,000-year-olds.
There was no electricity, maybe.
This is like 1930. They have planes.
Yeah, I guess.
Like
I don't know. I feel like you just had a random blackout for 2 hours in Pennsylvania, of all places. It's possible the 1930s Egypt did not have reliable electricity.
But like, as opposed to even if you don't have electricity, like gas lamps in glass, they're torches, Rachel. They're torches.
Yeah, whatever. Next thing, she meets up with her brother. He's like, yo, I pickpocketed this sweet thing, right? It's like a cool little
but he's hiding in a coffin. And he's he's pretending to be a mummy. But again, it's like these like British archaeologists who are supposed to be very competent, but also like are constantly doing shit with ancient artifacts.
Yeah, it's established that they're incompetent. I'm past that at this point. That's just like a given. That was a given even before the movie, but the movie is portraying it accurately. Like, yeah, that's here we are. So yeah, he's like, yo, sis, I found this awesome gadget thingy. I stole it off some guy that I got into a fight with, right? And then she opens it and it's like a sweet map to the Forbidden City, Hamunaptra.
And she's like, holy shit.
We gotta go.
And the guy.
Oh, it's not a map though. It's not a map. It's just information about it. Because that's why she needs Rick.
No.
Take them
No,
there.
she needs Rick because her boss burns it. Okay, so Jonathan stole it off of Rick. We don't know that it's Rick yet, but he did steal off of Rick because Rick and Benny are the only people still living besides the Magi.
Rick, aka Brendan Fraser.
I already established this.
We have to call them the reminding people, right?
Thank you. Yeah, so then they take it to her boss, to Evie's boss. And then Evie's boss, spoiler alert for later in the movie, is actually part of the incompetent Magi order. And he accidentally burns the map. And he's like, oh no, we can't go to Hamunaptra. And then Evie is like, hang on, Jonathan, don't you know who the man is? Didn't he go to Hamunaptra? Like, he can take us. And then Jonathan's like, oh shit, I have to meet this man that I robbed. Okay.
So off they go to the prison. It's never explained why Rick is in prison, I don't think, at this point.
He got a fight or something.
Yeah, maybe he's in there because of the fight with the brother. I don't know. He's in there and he's like, hey, lady, like, what can I do for you? And she's like, take us to the city. And he's like, only if you give me a kiss. And then he just sexually assaults her through the bars.
Okay, but you're skipping over why this is okay because Brendan Fraser, his hair is grown out. He's
God.
A little ruffled. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow. Rick is dirty and been in this prison for presumably a long time. And he if you ever wanted a sequel to George of the Jungle, this is it. This one specific scene in The Mummy is George of the Jungle transported to 1930s Egypt because he's sexy as hell.
Yeah, she's into the kiss. I'm not sure it totally makes it okay, but we're just going to move past that because
he's hot and he's wearing suspenders and he has rolled up sleeve.
For the record, people, it does not make it okay. Even if the guy kissing you without consent is hot, that does not make it.
Brendan Fraser could kiss me any day. And that's
okay. Well, that made the difference there would be that you were saying it's okay. Anyway, he agrees to take them, except that he's about to be hung.
For some reason.
That
doesn't really make sense that the fight with Jonathan would put him in jail because now he's being hung. Yeah, we never get the full backstory.
But anyway, so he's about to be hung and Evie's up there watching it with the prison warden, constantly trying to make a deal with him the entire time to let him go. And she doesn't succeed until he's he's hanging there, right? They pulled the lever.
Pull the lever, Gronk.
Yeah.
Well, because Evie's like, if you let him go, he's going to take us to Hamunaptra and I'll give you a cut of the treasure.
Right.
And so they're negotiating 20%, 30%. And then she does some clever negotiating play and gets him down to 25% when he was going to do 30. Anyway, Evie is competent and I don't care what you say. She knows that girl knows how to negotiate. But yeah, Rick is just hanging there.
Yeah, he's lucky his neck didn't snap.
That's very common.
Lucky.
For those of you that don't know, in hanging, the way it's supposed to kill you is supposed to snap your neck, but most of the time it doesn't, and then it just slowly chokes you to death.
Yep.
Which is why it was a very entertaining public event before there was television and radio.
All right. So our gang is getting to the boat. All right. They meet up and we have that classic scene where Evie sees Rick the first time, that he's not in prison garb, and he cleans up nice, and you can tell that she appreciates it. She's looking him up and down, and she's like, wow, I did not expect this to be what you looked like underneath the Egyptian prison grime.
She's talking about how much she's complaining to Jonathan. She's like, oh my God, he sucks so much. He kissed me. I was definitely into it, but I'm still mad about it. And she's like, he's terrible. And then from behind, we hear Rick be like, who's terrible? And she turns around and she's like, oh my God, this man is wearing suspenders and he has pomade in his hair and he smells like lavender or whatever soap they had. And it's beautiful. And she's like, yes. Oh no, I'll admit it, I'm aroused.
And our fourth member of the crew is the prison warden, who did actually show up despite, I guess she was hoping he wouldn't. He's like, got to make sure I get my cut, right?
Yes, but naturally he's
going to die very soon. Yeah.
Not that soon.
Pretty soon. He's the first one to die, I'm pretty sure.
Is he?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
they get on the boat on this beautiful little steamboat. It's like death on the Nile, and there is in fact a lot of death on the Nile on this boat.
Not because, but another important group that's there is, I guess, just another group of explorers led by
Americans.
You guessed it. Benny is making a reappearance.
Enemies to lovers, rivals. Like, I'm just saying, they're setting it up. And if Evie weren't in the picture, I'd be so for it. The Americans also, the only purpose the Americans serve is A, they're also hot. So just more eye candy in this already like very, very hot movie. And B, they exist to like get cursed. So that like Rick doesn't get his like eyes torn out by the mummy, and instead it's like beautiful boy, American boy who has shitty eyesight that gets his eyes ripped out.
That gets shittier eyesight.
They're also accompanied. It's 3 Americans and 1 suit. You want to talk about racist, sexist Egyptologists? That's this guy, their friend, who's like the Evie parallel, but he's like horrible and wears a fez, and he doesn't deserve to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they all meet up. Brendan Fraser / Rick realizes that Benny is here, and he's like, "Fuck this! You like led me to die. You basically like ditched me. I thought you were dead. Otherwise, I would have already killed you." So they have like a standoff, and then they also have like a moment where they're all like playing card game and betting, and I don't remember how. Yeah,
Jonathan is like, "Yeah, we're going to Hamunaptra," and Rick is like, "Jonathan, you fucking idiot. Why would you tell them this?" And they're like, "Well, we have someone to guide us who has also been to Hamunaptra." And that's how Rick finds out that it's Benny.
And then
because and then Rick and Evie have a little spat where
they make a bet. They make a bet over who's going to get there first. That's like somewhat relevant. Not really.
I mean, not really. It's not.
They're like, it's a competition. They're all competing now.
Anyway, he goes over to Evie and he's like, "Oh, are you still mad about the kiss?" And she's like, "If you call that a kiss." And I'm like, "I would call it a kiss."
For heaven's sake, Evie. It wasn't that good of a kiss anyway.
It absolutely was. But he plops his weapons bag down on the table and he like unrolls it. And it's absolutely meant to be like the equivalent of like whipping your dick out. Like he's supposed to be like, "I am a man and I have all these weapons and I'm going to roll them out on the table." And it's a turn on. I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't like that move would 100. If I was in 1930s Egypt, that move would 100% work on me. In a bar in the modern day in New York, if someone popped his weapons bag on the table and unfurled it, probably not, with the exception of if he was like a mafia prince, and then we could live that fantasy. But 1930s Egypt 100% would work on me.
And he beats into it. We can see that. But this boat is not going to be the setting for their burgeoning romance for long, because who do we see sneaking up on it but the Magi, who have now acquired boats. Yes.
Who have now acquired boats.
Yes.
That's true. So Rick is fighting with Benny, and then he throws him over the side because he's like obviously pissed at Benny. And then he turns around and he sees wet footprints on the floor of the boat.
Heading right for Evie's room. They of course head right for Evie because she has the contraption that she doesn't know.
It's a key. They call it a key. It's like this weird spiky thing. It like looks like
a
geometric.
Everything. It opens like 5 different things.
Yeah. For some reason they have like a universal, like again, more incompetent ancient magi, like making it very easy for this mummy to take over the world by having literally a master key for every single lock. Every single barrier can be opened by the same thing. The Book of the Dead, the mummy's coffin, the Book of Life, the tomb itself, the map, everything is around this key. And I'm like, you guys could have made it you could have done 2 keys, just like a level more difficult. You could have put more effort into this.
But luckily, or not so luckily, they once again fail to get the key back from Evie. And she is rescued by Rick, right?
Yeah, they try to kill her first.
Oh, they do, yeah.
Yeah, and they set the boat on fire, and this
boat is up in
poor
flames.
Magi man, the one that tries to kill Evie first, like he gets stabbed, he gets shot, he gets set on fire. He has a hook already, so like you already know that he's like
had a rough time of it.
He's like running through the boat, like finally jumps in the water. This poor man is like, he's really like, the job benefits cannot be good enough for the Magi to like justify him getting smacked around like this.
It seems like they all make it out okay though, like of the two competing crews to get to Hamunaptra. We have like the funny scene where like Benny and crew are like already on shore on one side of the river, and they're like, haha, like look at you guys, and like Rick and
we have all the horses,
Evie, etc. Are like on the other side. They're like, well, you're on the wrong side of the river, bitches. So, but somehow they lose that advantage. Somehow Benny and crew catch up.
Well, they have horses. Whereas
how is that going to help
Rick
you get across the
Evie
river
and crew?
That's true. Yeah.
Horses can fucking swim, Rachel.
No, I get that.
Anyway, then they go to a camp. So Rick and Evie and Jonathan and the prison warden, they're at like a camp, and we have a parallel moment to Rick's makeover with Evie, where she comes out and she's like wearing this like black linen outfit, and she has like across, like she's wearing like a black veil, and like across her face she has like a sexy like also black veil technically that's like see-through and has like gold jewelry on it. Like she looks like a sexy like woman, and Rick is like, God fucking damn it. It's gonna be very hard to go through the desert when I am constantly thirsty for this woman.
But go through the desert they do.
With camels. They have camels.
They make it. I think they like have a race scene. It's unimportant. They make it to Hamunaptra.
Which is, this doesn't make any fucking sense. So the only way you can see it is like the sun has to be in a specific space and like in the sky and like shine a light, and then it suddenly like appears like a mirage out of the desert. But like they're there for multiple days at a time, which implies that like the city is always there.
Once you're in, you know. It's
just like revealed. But I just like, is it magic or is it just like a special like trick of the light? Like I don't know how this works.
I mean, they can put immortal curses that unveil the plagues of Egypt. Yeah, definitely could be. I'm going to choose to believe that like once you're in though. Like that's explains. Like maybe it's just from a distance, just from the outside eyes.
Also, I want to point out that no one gets sunburned this whole time, despite the fact that they're in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Because as we know, skin cancer wasn't invented until the 1980s. But none of them get sunburned in any way, despite all being very white and pale.
Yep. So the next thing that we have is the Egyptologist like being a dick and being like, oh, well, you've only brought a woman who's an expert in this. Like, can you even read hieroglyphics? And she's like, bitch, I can. But she doesn't have any of her like tools, I guess. They were lost on the boat. So of course, Rick has to go fetch her some. And he steals some from their camp. And he's like, this is my gift to you. It's very romantic.
It's so cute. She gets her own. He has a weapons pack, and she has a rolled up archaeological tool pack. Yeah. They're twins.
Yeah. And I guess no, they don't go down. They don't explore yet, right? Or do the Magi attack first?
Yes, they do. So they go into
the tombs.
And explore.
They go.
And Evie finds the like bottom of the statue, which is like important. And is where like the canopic jars are. And the canopic jars are what is going to eventually screw over the Americans. It has like all of Anak's organs in it. So Evie and Rick actually find that first, but then like shortly after, the Americans and misogynist Fez man pops up, and they're like, this is ours. And then they have a little gun standoff, and Evie is like, oh, I guess we can go, because she actually realizes there's like a chamber below it. So she's like, we can just like go in from the bottom instead of being in this gunfight.
And leaves the dummy Americans to take the canopic jars, setting themselves up for eye eating later. But not before Prison Warden is the first to make the unlucky discovery of the scarabs. He like goes to the wall and he's like, "Oh, what are these cool shiny bugs in the wall? Oh, a nice."
He doesn't think they're bugs. He thinks they're just jewels.
Jewels, like whatever, like valuable shit. and he takes them, pops them in his bag. Lo and behold, they immediately chew through the bag and go into his shoe and then up his leg into his heart. And he's like,
it's very gross.
Yeah, it's very gross. They're eating him alive from the inside. He like runs outside screaming. They're like, oh my God, like what happened? But by the time they like get there, he's just like dead. And they're like, oh, I guess he had a heart attack. Guess we get to keep that 25% for ourselves, rats.
Yeah. They're like, concerned. No need to investigate this in any way. That this man just like died very suddenly and very like violently in this tomb. And then they discover the mummy. And he has a little inscription in which he's called He That Shall Not Be Named. Nice. And I'm like, well, he is bald, and I guess that's a requirement for. And
at the beginning, does not have a nose. Yeah,
that's true.
No nose. Yeah,
you're right. They open the mummy tomb.
Dummies.
They open the mummy tomb. The mummy pops out. He's very scary. He's not wrapped up anymore. There are no scarabs. He just pops out, and they leave him hanging there. They don't even take the mummy out. Like they don't examine him or anything. They're just like, oh God. And then next thing we know, they're outside and hanging out.
Yeah, an Egyptologist guy has managed to acquire the Book of the Dead, but it's locked because he doesn't have the universal key to open it. Dumbass. But he does know not to open it, right? Like he's not a fool in that respect. He's like we are not reading. Yeah, don't do that.
Well, because he's already seen that there's some shit going on in this tube outside of the prison guy, because when they're opening the canopic jar box, he's like, hang on, there may be some ancient booby traps here. So instead of us Americans / me opening this, why don't we get the poor local laborers that we've hired to come along with us to open it? And they all get burned alive by salt acid booby traps. Yep. And it's horrible. More examples of why this man does not deserve to wear a fez or carry around his cute little umbrella that he's constantly carrying around with himself. Yeah. So he is a dick, but he does understand the power of the Book of the Dead. So he's like not opening it. He's sleeping with it. He's like keeping it on him at all time. He's like trying to.
Doesn't stop Evie from trying out her own little light finger display. This is the third instance. Everyone has to shoplift something at some point in this. Not shoplift, steal, just outright pickpocket.
Yeah. But before they steal it, the Magi attacks.
The scrimmage, yeah. And instead of like killing them all or making them leave right away, they're like, you have a day to get out. Leave. And which is really weird because they've already shown themselves to be super bloodthirsty, even like on a riverboat. So why in their home territory are they like so chill?
Yeah, why when these like dumb Westerners are so close to
already have infiltrated the tomb. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But we get a cute little. This is a romance podcast, so we got to point out there's a cute little scene with Rick and Evie in which Rick is checking Evie for injuries, and he's like, "Oh my God, is she okay?" Like he's like patting her down, and like he just cares about her. He's like, "I have to make sure." And at some point, she's like, she reminds him that she's a librarian, like she's not there to like battle things. And suddenly Rick is like, I've just developed a sexy librarian kink. We're gonna have to explore this later, but filing that away.
Evie, noting this, is like, well, I stupidly didn't bring any books with me. I must go secure one.
Yeah. He's also the best and worst line in the movie as the Magi are leaving. Rick is like, these men are desert people. They value water, not gold.
Oh, God. What is the context for that? Like,
I think like the Americans are like, oh, they just want the gold for themselves. They just want to like steal it.
The Magi, yeah.
And like, yeah, the Magi just want to like, they just want it for themselves. Like, and Rick is like, nah, dudes, like there's something else going on here. Like if they're like this, like hung up about this place, like it's because there's some shit going on. But of course, no one listens to Rick because otherwise we wouldn't have a movie.
Yeah. Instead of delving further into this odd segue of the water thing. Yeah. So
they're all hanging out by a campfire. Rick comes over to Benny and is like, you're in her seat, so that Evie has a seat. And he's like, get the fuck up, Benny. Like, you're no longer my lover. Evie has surpassed you. Like, make room for my lady. And then she steals the book. Yes, she's stolen the book.
She
now.
Sneaks away in the middle of the night and she has the book. And of course, she also has the key for the book. So opens the book. And of course, the first thing she does is read out loud from the book, which
in ancient Egyptian. She doesn't even translate.
Right. As we should all know, is probably the worst thing you can do when currently what if she had like waited to read the book until she got home? Like, do you think that still would have triggered the curse? You like have to be in the city.
I don't think you have to be in the city. But I think the fact that they're in the city just enables them to like encounter the mummy
more quickly
for cinematic purposes.
Egyptologist wakes, like he like sits up from his sleep and he's like, no, don't read from the book, but it's too late. And the curse has been triggered.
And there's locusts. There's a giant, and it's like the Midwest in the summer.
Swarming. So that causes some problems, but not enough for them to want to leave.
No, they all run away from the locusts into the tomb.
True.
They all run into the tomb from the locusts. The Egyptologist guy has like a big dramatic line. This is his last really relevance in the story. And he's like, what have we done? And I'm like, well, maybe if the British just stopped trying to steal Egyptian things, this wouldn't have happened. But y'all had to be colonizers, and look what you've done now.
Yep. And the first true victim is our friend Glasses Guy. He pulls a Velma moment. He has a Velma moment where he trips as everyone's like trampling him and his glasses fall off. And he's like, my glasses. And he's like stumbling around trying to find them just in time to put them on. And who does he see but the now animate mummy?
And what does the mummy do? Takes his eyes. And he takes his tongue. I don't know why he takes his eyes. Presumably, like the mummy transformation is like includes LASIK of like magical Egyptian LASIK of some sort. Because I don't know why you would take the eyes of the guy, the only person who wears glasses, the only guy with like terrible vision
available
in this whole movie. You take his eyes. I guess like the first thing you need when you're a mummy is like you need eyes like immediately, so you can like see your next victims.
Yeah, his glasses had fallen off, so he could be forgiven for not realizing.
Yes. But maybe the reason, so later on we find out that the mummy, Imhotep, thinks that like Evie is his ex-girlfriend. Like he wants to like, or his like former girlfriend. He thinks she's like Anak, and he like makes out with her at some point. He wants to use her as a sacrifice to like bring Anak back to life. And maybe the whole reason he thinks Evie is Anak is because he has shitty eyesight, is because he's like, oh, a relatively the same height, both have dark hair, definitely my girlfriend for sure.
Yeah, he hasn't been looking at many people for many years, so it's could be forgiven. Yeah,
but Evie stumbles upon hot glasses guy, and she's like, are you okay? Like she's like gets trapped, like she like hides from scarab beetles who are chasing them down the hallway, and she like goes into this trap door and it spins her around exactly where hot glasses guy is, and she's like, oh my god, like, are you okay? And then she turns around and who's there?
Imhotep, the mummy.
There he is. And he thinks she's his girlfriend.
Yeah, he's like, wow, I'm so into you. She's like, wow, leave me alone.
And then Rick appears. And one of my favorite tropes in action movies ever is when like the monster, like Imhotep unhinges his jaw and whatever and like screams at them.
Oh, yeah.
And then Rick is just like, ah! And then he runs, and then he like shoots him and runs away.
Yeah. And then I think at this point is when they start getting chased by like a tidal wave of the scarab beetles, right?
No, they've already been chased by the tidal wave of the
and they have
beetles.
To like, narrow escape from that. Evie is like jumping up onto a ledge. Like that's when she falls back into the chamber, right?
No, because that's how she encounters the mummy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They'd already been, that's why they were running to begin with, right? That's why Glasses Guy fell.
Because of the scarab beetles.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think like Jonathan or someone, like somebody like triggers the scarab beetles again.
So, okay. So does anything else happen before they're like, all right, time to get the fuck out of here?
Well, I think they get the fuck out of there, but now the mummy has a sidekick.
Oh, true. We don't know. Benji, in true snake form, Benny, unsurprisingly, has decided to go with the character most. He's like, well, if I help him destroy the world, maybe he'll leave me alone. Which honestly, not the worst thinking, like logically, but
to be fair to Benny, the mummy is advancing on him. Now, Benny did not take one of the jars, so he's not like cursed to be like have his like body parts taken for Imhotep's like regeneration, but Imhotep is like clearly about to kill him, and so Benny's like, he has like a Star of David and like a cross and like the like half moon and star that's Islam, right? And he's like pulling them out, he's like praying in all these different languages, and then he finally starts praying in Hebrew. The mummy's like, the language of the slaves, like I can use this man as my servant, which apparently, Rachel, what did you tell me when we were watching?
There's like any evidence that the Hebrew people were ever actually slaves in Egypt. There's a lot of different theories about how that story got into like the Torah/Bible. There's like something about how there might have been like an earlier tribe that was enslaved by Egypt, and then like the Israelites met up with them, and then that sort of like got passed down in the lore. But yeah, I don't think there's any point at which the ancient Egyptian pharaoh would have heard Hebrew, like historically.
No, it's so,
it doesn't make sense.
And I honestly, like, when I found this out, I felt so betrayed because The Prince of Egypt is one of the best animated stories of all time. And I was under the impression there was like historical truth to it. Like the same way that, like, regardless of whether the other believe that like Jesus existed, like Caesar was a thing, and like they did do a census like around this time, and like there's like historical backing.
I think the census thing is not. I think there's historical backing that Jesus did exist, but not the census never happened in
Basically,
that way.
what I'm saying is that like the details aren't like provable, but like there's like a general historical backing. So I was under the impression that the same thing was the case for like Jewish people being slaves in Egypt, and apparently not the case at all. There's no historical evidence that ever
which is unfortunate,
happened.
But it works for Benny in this movie. Also, Benny, just in general, it's very unclear like where he's from, what his like accent is in general. Like he just seems prepared. He seems prepared for all situations. He blends in, and it works for him here because Sarah's like, language of the slaves. You can be my servant. Win-win.
And then he pulls out like a pocket full of gold that I don't know. This man was like mummified, presumably naked. So I don't know where he has pockets. Like, is he holding it in his rib cage? Like, what's going on? But he pulls out and he's like, I'll give you gold if you serve me.
Which is nice of him, because it seems to me like Benny would have done it for free at this point.
Yeah, no, he's paid. So like, at least he's paid to be evil. It's not like exploitative henchmanship. I mean, it kind of is.
Just Benny exploiting everyone else. Yeah. It's true. Everyone else who has now attempted to fuck off back to Cairo and presumably back to wherever. Yeah, they're all trying to get like the soonest flight out.
Yeah, they have a boat for the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm like, listen, if I know that I've just awoken like an ancient all-powerful mummy and I have seen in the flesh what this guy looks like, and I have been told explicitly by the Magi that like my gunshot to him did not take him out effectively, like I would not be waiting for the scheduled boat. I would be like stealing a fucking steamer and taking off down the Nile.
Swimming,
I would immediately be
riding a crocodile. Yeah.
Like no, not sticking around in any case. But yeah, so they're all hanging out at the hotel, and we meet Winston, who is a mustachioed former
gentleman
airplane guy. He like runs the airplane base, the British airplane base.
And we find out explicitly his life goal is to go down in the desert like his boys. So later on, we're going to get the crew the gang is going to charter him for a flight, which seems like a really bad move from someone whose only explicit goal is to go down in the desert like his boys did. But we're jumping a little ahead there. So I think
glasses guy needs his end.
Yeah, it's not going well for him.
Benny's a snake. Benny, so he's hanging out in his room. They're all downstairs at the bar getting a drink because, you know, they're understandably traumatized. And Benny has brought the mummy up in a disguise to meet glasses guy who is blind now. And he's like, Prince Imhotep thanks you for your eyes. And then glasses guy is like, oh no! And then he like
there's a little bit more. Yeah. It's a good line.
The life sucked out of him. Benny is a snake, but damn, does he do it well? Like, well done, Benny. Like.
So the next thing, the mummy, his like goal right now is to track down all the people who took the jars and regenerate himself. It's also to secure Evie as a sacrifice. And when do we get the cat scene? There's a good cat scene in here because apparently until the mummy is fully regenerated, he can be repelled by cats. So we see him like run in fear from a cat. And at this point, it's unclear to me if I was the Canoptic Jar people / Evie, I would just be like getting all the cats off the street, like asking anyone for a pet cat,
carrying them around myself with them.
All times. Like I just don't understand like why. Yeah, if he can't regenerate because he can't come near you because you have a cat, then he can never stop being afraid of cats. So it just seems like the perfect like solution here. But despite having this information, they do not act on it.
Well, because what happens is that they're in a room, they confront him, they see him, and they're like, oh shit, the mummy's here. And then like a cat like accidentally walks on the piano keys and he's like, ah, and then he like turns into a fucking tornado of sand and like zooms out.
And don't worry, this will be affecting the cat scale of this movie. They had the potential there. It is not quite realized.
They delivered.
That's okay. So Rick has decided to like lock Evie in a room for her safety, right? Despite the fact that we know now that this will not stop the mummy. I guess they don't know that. And Evie's like not happy about this.
She's not happy. She's being protected by the other canopic jar people. So they're all like in one space, making it very easy for the mummy to find them. Just except for Fez, misogynist Egyptologist, who's just running around like with the Book of the Dead, just like running around the city, like being scared. But this is when we discovered the museum curator is actually also an ineffective magi, because he like gives them the rundown on like he's gonna take over the world, he's gonna regenerate. This is where we get like all the background on like the mummy that we've talked about so far. And then the mummy obviously starts unleashing the plagues of Egypt. The water turns to blood, and like there's a eclipse, and like all of this shit. And
locusts are still making their way down the countryside.
Yeah. And like everyone's sick, everyone has like boils or whatever, like they're all like the people are turning into zombies. And then the mummy sneaks in, kills the other dudes, like they're done. He's slowly picking off the Americans stop being relevant, and now he has access to the Book of the Dead because he's captured the dumb Egyptologist who's just been running around the city scared.
He also like shows up to get Evie, right?
Yes, he shows up to Evie's room. He turns into sand and slips in through the locked door like a sneaky little bastard. And then he starts making out with her. But like half his face still has like holes in
honestly,
it. Like,
at this point, I like would have been fine with an Evie Imhotep story. Like I'm kind of like rooting for him to like get his love back. Like I'm telling you, he did not start out as the bad guy. He was forced into a villain by circumstance. And honestly, if he had not been intending to sacrifice Evie, if he was just intending to like become all powerful and then she gets to be his like, you know, partner in world domination, I would have been here for it. Like,
yeah,
you know, sorry, Rick's cool, but like when faced with all powerful
also
mummy,
very sexy,
yeah,
like, and all powerful. Yeah, I feel like the way this movie should have ended was with like a double date between Rick and Evie and Imhotep and Anak.
Yes, definitely. Yes,
beautiful.
But that is not the direction he decides to take it in, and Evie is not happy about it. How does she get out of that little sticky situation?
It's because Rick bursts in because Rick realizes the mummy has gone for Evie, and Rick and Jonathan burst in, and Rick pulls out of nowhere. He pulls out a cat. Rick understands the assignment. He pulls out the same cat, and the cat goes. And then the mummy goes, and turns into a sand tornado again and zooms out of the room.
Yep.
Anyway, though, however, they're not out of the shit yet because the people of Cairo have been turned into zombies and they're controlled by the
mummy. Yep.
Yeah. So they have to run away. So they're running away
in a cool car that they are really bad at driving and crash into a lot of shit. And then for some reason, just it bumps into like a fruit cart and they're like, must abandon ship. And then they're just like in the street. And and then Evie's boss, who's also a magi, makes an extremely unnecessary self-sacrifice, which I think happened a few times in this movie. He's like, leave me, and like throws himself into the zombie crowd for no reason because it doesn't help them. They would have been no more or less likely to get away with or without him. Yeah. He just like decides, he's gone. He's unnecessary.
Maybe because he's just so embarrassed by how poorly the Magi have done their job. He's like, I gotta go out like this. I mean,
they did make it like 3,000 years. Yeah, they really let down the crew. They let down like all their ancestors.
Rachel, they made it 3,000 years because nobody had found this city until now. Like, it's literally not because they were doing anything effective.
Well, no, he was like preventing people from finding the city. You know, he like set the map on fire. Maybe the reason no one's found it is like an entire
until Rick found it at Hamunaptra.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. They let him get away for no reason. Yeah. But anyway, museum director, actual Egyptian, we think, sacrifices himself, allowing the rest of the gang to escape down a sewer, I think.
No. Yes. Wait.
There's a fight scene. No, this is where the mummy gets Evie. Yes, the mummy shows up, parts the crowd as the boss is being mauled by zombies, and he's like, "Give me." We
have a Hawkeye standoff between Rick and Imhotep. Like they stare at each other, like, and their jaw lines are just like cracklingly sharp, and their abs are like pulsing, and like Imhotep is wearing nothing but a cape and a loincloth, and it's just chef's kiss.
Yes, and then we have the classic, for some reason, foolishly believing the person when they're like, come with me and I won't kill your friends. That's what the mummy says to Evie. And despite that never being true ever in like the history of cinema, fiction, probably real life too, she goes with him and he's like, okay, thanks for coming with me. Now I will kill your friends.
Yep. And this is when the museum curator sacrifices himself for them. But they jump down the sewer. Rick pulls open the sewer cap and he's like, go, go, go. And like Jonathan is jumping down and he like the hot magi with the under eye tattoos is also with them and he jumps down. And then Rick is like, museum curator, come on, jump down. We all definitely have time to run to safety. And then instead the museum curator is like, no, I am going to do a very ineffective sacrifice. I'm going to take out like one zombie before I'm immediately like overpowered by the crowd.
Yep.
But the rest of them get to safety.
Yeah, he's out of
for long.
Now. Nope.
Because who do they meet? Who do they meet next, Rachel? Who do they go to for help?
What is his name? I can't remember.
Winston,
whose only goal in life, let me reiterate, is to go down in the sand with his boys. And of course, their first thought in response to this is the person we need to fly us to Hamunaptra to rescue Evie and kill the mummy. All right?
Fair, he's the only one with a plane.
It's true. Yeah, they don't know anyone else with a plane. It's honestly not that bad of a plan. But this does bring us to... For some reason, I was on a plane like a few months ago and I just like had the thought, and I said this to Cameron, who was with me at the time. I was like, I wonder if there's ever a situation where it would be necessary for someone to ride on the wing of the plane, like for the good of like everyone else. Like I can't think of what it would be, but like
no, you asked me.
Oh, I asked you. Okay, yeah, sorry, I asked you. I was like, is there like any reason? Can you think of like a scenario? And then lo and behold, a few weeks later, we watched this movie. And who is strapped to the wing of the plane? But I actually can't remember who it is. I think
it's Jonathan.
It's Jonathan, yeah.
And the Magi. And no, it's Jonathan and Rick, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep, strapped to the wings of the plane because there's not enough room. You know what? And it works. They almost get there without crashing.
I do want to emphasize, Rachel, that this not only applies in the case of like a 1920s like open air plane.
Yeah, it's not like a
commercial flight.
Sure, but you know what? Now that we found one example, I'm not closing my mind off to the idea that even on a commercial flight, there could be a scenario.
Hey, listen, in one of the Mission Impossible movies, the movie like starts with Tom Cruise jumping onto a plane that's taking off and like holding on to the door. So another example, 2 examples of action movies. Yeah. And also related to The Mummy, Tom Cruise did that very terrible remake of The Mummy in 2017.
I was about to say, oh, but Mission Impossible was a movie and this was real life. But like it could be real life, like those planes exist. Yeah. Okay, so
The Mummy's a sandstorm. He travels by sandstorm exclusively.
He can also bring other people along with him, which is an interesting ability. Like that's pretty convenient.
Pretty sick.
Yeah. So he brings Benny and Evie with him, and they're just like hanging out on a dune. And what do they see in the distance but the plane? And Evie's like, "See, I told you they would rescue me." The Mummy's like, "Haha. Watch this. It's pretty cool." So he becomes, not only can he travel by sandstorm, he can be the sand. He becomes like giant sand monster, like picture Cave in Aladdin, and chases them, right?
He controls the sand because he's still standing next to Evie, which is important.
But his face is like in the sand.
But he has to mimic it. Like, so when the sand face opens his mouth, like the Mummy has to go like, ah, like he can't just control it with his mind.
Winston, I guess, had an extra condition to his like life's goal, not just to go down, but to go down with style. And he manages to evade the Mummy quite some time and crash land without killing any of the people strapped to the wings of the plane.
Yes. So but Rachel, what did they crash land into?
Quicksand,
which for some reason I always thought was a much bigger threat than it actually is. I don't understand how there's quicksand in the middle of the desert because quicksand requires water.
Right.
There's no water in this desert.
Yeah. I guess there could be water like in a shelf underneath, but like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's more of like an Amazon jungle type threat, not a desert threat, but whatever. Because it does enable Winston's dead and
he goes down with his boys. But the reason they're not totally destroyed is because Imhotep is about to like eat them with his sand face. But Evie does a distraction kiss, which is also one of the best tropes.
And it's pretty hot. If he wasn't trying to kill the other people right now / living off of stolen organs, like great pairing.
Thruple.
Yeah. Plus enough.
MMF.
MMFF. Yeah. Okay, so the mummy is on the cusp of success, getting his love back, which is his entire goal. The fact that he has been in a coffin because of her for 3,000 years has not soured him on their love. And he has the whole setup. He has Evie strapped to a table. He has the Anak mummy strapped next to her. It's all looking good.
Well, the Anak mummy's not strapped down because like she's a mummy.
True.
She doesn't need to be strapped down. But Evie is, and it's very like it awakened something in me. I'm not going to pretend like seeing like Rachel Weisz strapped to the table was not very wonderful to see. There's a reason this movie is like a bisexual like piece of cinema. Like it's because you want to fuck both of them. You want to fuck Rick and you want to fuck Evie and you want to fuck Imhotep and you want to fuck sexy Magi Man and like it's wonderful. Also that scene in the scene where she's strapped is very reminiscent of my personal sexual awakening, which was that one scene in like that 1970s Sinbad movie in which the love interest of that movie is also strapped to a table. And I remember being like 7 years old and thinking, am I attracted to this? Like what feelings is this stirring inside me seeing this? And I think I just really like when hot ladies are strapped to tables in movies. So more of that, please.
Except that Rick's about to come in and ruin the whole shebang because he does not want her to be stabbed and have her soul transferred or whatever.
I mean, without the stabbing. The strapping, yes. No stabbing, however. Yeah. I draw the line there.
Okay, so this is, what's coming up, I think, is Jonathan's one moment to shine because although he's a much worse Egyptologist than Evie, he does have a passing knowledge of hieroglyphics, right? He can sort of read. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's all down to him to. Oh, at one point before escaping Cairo, they acquired like the Book of Life or something, whatever, the like anti-book that would shut this whole thing down, right?
Yeah. So it's underneath. So the Book of the Dead was underneath like Horus or Anubis. Like Horus and Anubis are the gods of like life and death in ancient Egypt, right? So I think like Anubis is death, so that's where they found the Book of Death, and then underneath Horus is where they find the Book of Life, which is opened once again.
Same key, the master lock, which like, okay, all right. We got to get that. So Jonathan is like, I gotta open the book, gotta read the book, but I don't know how to read. And he's like desperately scrambling to like do that because if he can manage to do that, it would like, end this whole thing a little bit prematurely.
But Jonathan's meanwhile is just like, what up? My name's Jonathan. I'm 19 and I never fucking learned how to read. Yep. Meanwhile, Evie and Rick are fighting for their lives from the zombie servant horde that the mummy has resurrected to fight against them.
Yep. And we got a lot of sexy fight scenes here.
There's one point where one of the mummies is like clinging to Brendan Fraser, and I'm like, I would have loved to have been a mummy extra in this movie so that I could also cling to Brendan Fraser tightly.
We got some sexual tension between Anak and Evie, who like Anak has like been almost resurrected at this point, so she's like able to move and stuff. So they're like fighting to the death or anti-life, whatever Anak's fighting.
They're having a sexy knife fight, and it's fantastic. Jonathan is still wandering around trying to translate. Evie's having to give him pointers like while avoiding being stabbed. Then they resurrect the bodyguards of Pharaoh, who are allegedly the good guys, and now Jonathan can control them because he has like figured out that part of the book. So they like take down everyone else. They help them take down. Rick and Imhotep have their standoff. We have another sexy hand-to-hand combat scene. Jonathan finally gets his shit together. Rick stabs Imhotep, unfortunately, in his sexy abs. And then Imhotep is mortal, and his soul gets sucked to the
back
underworld.
Into the evil pool. Yeah.
By no, there's like a ghost chariot that comes to take his soul, and then he doesn't defeat him. He's mortal, so they just like. That's when they stab him in the stomach and then they push him into the pool. And he's like, it's like sucked in.
A little anticlimactic. He's already been mourning Anak at this point, right? She's already gone.
Yeah, she's dead, unfortunately.
It's all over.
Sad news. True love doesn't win.
But it's not quite time to celebrate because in true Aladdin Cave of Wonder fashion, that's what this reminds me of, / national treasure / any situation where they're like finding ancient treasure trove. And then of course it has to collapse around them. Benny, I think it's Benny who triggers it, right? He like stupidly like hangs up his like bag or something on a lever without noticing.
He's been carrying out bags and bags and bags of treasure,
Yeah.
and he's just being greedy now.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I have too much treasure, not enough hands. Let me leave one here for safekeeping. Pulls the lever, and of course, the entire tomb is set to self-destruct,
as is required in any sort of ancient.
Yes, and so Evie, Rick, and Jonathan are all on their way out, and they run into Benny. And instead of being like, "Fuck you, Benny," you help the guy who was trying to destroy the world. Rick still tries to help him. But Benny Benny like greedily runs back to try to grab his like last bag of treasure or something, and the wall closes, so he's like trapped. Our gang makes it out, but Benny
gets his comeuppance because he's in the treasure room.
That's all the treasure he could want.
Looks a lot like National Treasure, the movie, the same treasure room. That's what you should picture if you've never seen The Mummy. And he's like standing with the torch, and then what comes creeping up?
Scuttling.
The scarabs! And then his torch slowly goes out, and then all we hear is Benny's mournful scream. He is very horrifically eaten alive.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it mournful. I would call it more like panicked, terrified.
It's just like a wail in the dark.
Yeah, very unpleasant, but probably quick, unlike the fate that Imhotep had to suffer. Okay, so luckily Benny is the only one who dies, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
And then at one point, the Magi guy, hot Magi guy with under eye tattoos, did another stupid fake unnecessary sacrifice, but he didn't die because he comes back at the end. He's like, he comes up with camels, and he's like, hey, well, you guys were finishing off the mummy. I was getting our ride home.
Maybe that was his sacrifice, was missing out on the adventure.
Yeah,
and
he's like, I have to wait
camels.
for the Uber, guys. Like,
yeah,
like you know how I had terrible cell reception out here in the desert.
Here we have the completion of our romance arc.
Yes, because Jonathan is like, I guess we go home empty-handed, which is not true because the camels are actually filled with Benny's treasure that he hauled out. But Jonathan's like, I guess we go home empty-handed. And Rick looks at Evie, who is sitting on the camel with Rick, and Rick is like, I wouldn't say that. And then they kiss. Yep. And they ride off into the sunset. Yep. And that's why it's a romance movie and not an action movie, no matter what anyone tries to tell you.
Yep.
End scene.
End scene. Cut. Great.
The end. And this movie, I do want to point out that every time I suggest that I watch this movie in any group setting, the whole group is like, no, I don't want to watch The Mummy. That sounds lame. And then we watch it and everyone's like so into it and like excited to see what's happening next and is like commenting. And this is exactly what happened with you, Rachel, where I was like, let's watch The Mummy with the family. And everyone complained bitterly. And then everyone was into it at the end because it's a classic and it's amazing. It's a fantastic film. Love it.
Yep.
Highly recommend. 10 out of 10.
Cat scale out of 10.
9.5 out of 10 for imperialism, but otherwise 10 out of 10.
For the cat? Well, oh, no, 10 out of 10.
No.
Cat scale 10 out of 10, I'm asking. Out of 10.
9 out of 10.
Yeah, I just feel like, I almost feel like we should dock points because of the huge potential for cat use that was like completely a letdown to only see cats twice, you know? I feel like there were some other cat moments too, though, that I can't.
Here's my thing. There was a literal cat. There were multiple appearances of literal cats. Yeah. The same cat.
But not as many as there could have been, you know?
Ancient Egypt, which is already cat focused.
It's true. Well, that's why the cats are there, to be fair.
No. Well, no, because the cat is just like the hotel cat that's just like hanging around.
Yeah, true.
Either way, I'm saying there was a literal cat. There was a lot of hissing, a lot of like roaring involved.
But yeah, the roar, the mummy Rick mutual roar situation.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Very cat-like. Rick is Rick is a dog, but Evie is a cat. 9 out of 10.
8.5.
What?
I'm docking a point for lack of potential, lack of failure to live to potential.
I do want to point out that we gave 8 out of 10 to The Hating Game.
Yeah, but it's almost like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, okay, let's say you're watching a movie called Wolf King, okay? And like a cat makes an appearance. You're like, wow, this is a shock. I'm happily surprised. You're watching Tiger King. A tiger only appears once. You're like, wow, it's the same number of cat appearances, but like completely, your expectations matter. Baselines matter.
To be fair though, this movie was called The Mummy and not like The Pussy. Like,
but again, ancient Egypt, you know?
I guess.
And then we get the setup of like, he is deathly afraid of cats. Like, this is like this is his fatal flaw. This is Achilles' heel, if you will.
I really think this movie would have been elevated even further if like everybody just had a kitten in their pocket the entire time.
Yeah.
And they just like pulled it out and it went, meow.
Meow.
Meow, meow.
Yep.
The Meow Me. 1999, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz.
Nice. Good
nice.
one.
Thank you. Anyway. Where can they find us, Rachel?
You can follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook at We Read It One Night. Or follow us on Twitter at We Read It Podcast. You can also email us at wereaditonenight@gmail.com.
And if you would subscribe, follow, and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, preferably 5 stars, that would really help us out in reaching more people and bringing more folks into the romance fam. And if you leave the name of a book or a movie that you want us to cover in future episodes in your review, you will get added to our magical mystical Excel sheet where we look to for future episodes. So you can help contribute in making this podcast even better. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.